This is module number 2 of prompting principles, and today we're going to be going over JSON and how it can help you structure outputs within N8N. This is seriously one of the biggest unlocks for you as an automator or as an agent builder, in my opinion, because when you can create structured outputs, it allows you to manipulate your data much more. It allows you to filter your data. You can actually map it to certain fields dynamically a lot easier with the agent output. If you're kind of confused with what I'm saying right now, that's okay, because I've created a slideshow. I've created some examples that we're going to walk through, and I'm going to break it down from start to finish. So fear not, I am here to help you create structured outputs with JSON. And there is a little bit of learning involved. It's nothing too crazy, but if you keep practicing, I have no doubt that you could learn this stuff in 1 to 2 days. So don't fear, and obviously not like crazy, full-on JSON, but enough to get you by in this agentic landscape. So let's move into it. We're starting off with part 2 of prompting principles, creating structured outputs with JSON. And I just wanted to mention right off the jump that we're dealing with dynamics here. The power of N8N agent building lies within the dynamic fields. Our entire automation is built upon pulling information from previous nodes in the form of expressions. When using the advanced AI node, the N8N secret sauce, we are left with a problem. But first, let me show you an image example of what I'm talking about dealing with dynamics. We know from previous modules that we can dynamically map fields to the AI agent in order to create a prompt. Last module, we went over creating agent instructions with XML. I highly recommend watching that before this because we're also going to be working with XML instructions as we're crafting our JSON. But we have the ability from previous modules. As you can see right here, I'm using a Gmail node. And I might mix up the word node and module. I get confused with make.com and I mix them up sometimes. But we have a Gmail node that's pulling information in to our N8N workspace, like body content of emails, subjects, and we can dynamically pull and map those fields to the AI agent. So we can say, here's a subject line, map the subject line down here. This will dynamically change depending on the email that gets pulled in. We can map text in the email body, right? And both of these will change as the email changes. That's the beautiful thing about mapping dynamic information. But again, when we're using this advanced AI node, we are left with a problem with this because we don't get all of this cool structured information to pull from. We only get one field. So this is without JSON in your AI agent. This is what you're going to experience. As you can see, it just gives us one output field no matter what you have, unless you have a JSON parser. So if we craft a response with our AI agent and it responds to us, it takes in all of our information. We can map it dynamically so it can create a custom output for any situation. We can create that, but it's only going to give us one output field. So now I've got to use this entire output field in one other mapping. This is all I have now is one output. I don't have, like the other applications, multiple different outputs that I can pull from. And when you learn how to structure your outputs with JSON, your agent outputs are going to go from looking like this with one output to looking like this. So with JSON and an agent, you can structure as many fields as you like in the response to take control of your data. Now the agent response when you use JSON looks like this. So within our output, we have a subject line we can pull, we have a body we can pull, and we have sign off that we can pull. So this would be an example of using JSON in an emailing agent. We can extract multiple different parts of the email. We have my sign off that I can now map to a different field, the body that I can control, and the subject line. As I said down here, we can select subject line that our model created, body, and sign off. So this allows you to control what part of the output you want to use. And it does take some structuring and some understanding of what JSON is and how to create it. But oftentimes AI is really good at helping you through these things. I had to brush up on my JSON skills using AI before this module. I actually learned a lot just asking questions about how to get this structure. So, I could package it up and teach it to you. But just keep in mind, we go from having one output with everything in that same output, my sign off, subject line, body, When we don't have JSON, that's what it looks like. When we do have JSON, you have these individual fields, which is very cool. So that's what we're going to be learning how to do and structure and build today. I'm going to have a slideshow that I'm going to show you. It's going to be quite informational, and I recommend you take notes, whether you're taking screenshots of my screen and pasting it in a software, or if you're taking paper notes, that works too. It's a great way to retain information. So let's get right into it. Structured data. This is an important point. With JSON, AI can parse and structure your data into multiple fields you easily map, as I showed you. This is great for things like filtering, routing, exporting fields, and more. Branching your automation depending on what certain fields say. Maybe I could, branch out my automation in a different way if the subject line of the email being sent to me was, for example, promotional offer. Maybe I want to go a different route in my automation if I'm getting subject lines of promotional offer. So that's something that, you could do with JSON, is structure those fields in a way that you can use them for routing and branching. Let's get into the next point. What is JSON? JSON stands technically for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a lightweight format for storing and transporting data. The fundamental building blocks of JSON are objects with these curly braces and arrays with these square brackets here. Everything in JSON is either a JSON array, item 1, item 2. We're going to dive deeper into how to structure this. A primitive, string, number, Boolean, or null, or a JSON object with key value pairs. So key value, key value. Here's a basic example of a JSON object. And keep in mind, JSON objects are usually just full of key value pairs. So we have key, string, which a string could be a name. We're going to get into that. We have key, number, key, Boolean. So you might be kind of confused right now, already a little scared, but we're going to really break this down, and this is just such an overhead view. You don't even have to worry about it. But first we have keys. Keys must always be in double quotes. So keys are like your naming convention, like what you're about to describe. So for example, I could put name right here, and then name could be Drake. Okay, so that would be an example of a key value pair. Name, what's my name? Drake. And since Drake is a string, I would have to put Drake in quotes. We're going to dive into that. Strings are in double quotes, and these are the instances of values. These are what values can be within JSON. You have strings in double quotes, so things like nouns, sentences, instructions, people, anything that's like words. A word string is what you would put right there. You have numbers, which require no quotes. So if I were to put my age right here, age would obviously require quotes because all keys require double quotes, but my age wouldn't require any quotes. Numbers don't have quotes. And then we have Booleans, which are true or false. So maybe I have a key here like is in college. Well, that Boolean would be false. We have arrays, which are in the form of these square brackets, and other JSON objects can be within a different JSON object. So all JSON objects are surrounded by these curly brackets or these curly braces, but you can have other JSON objects with more curly braces within the initial JSON object. So you can have, similar to XML instructions, like pages and subpages of data. And then we have null for another value. So this is usually when you get like an error or when nothing is there. When there is no value, it's null. So you could see that like actually spelled out is null. In order to make this easy, I wanted to break down JSON into 3 main focuses. These 3 main focuses are what we can use to craft pretty much any type of instructions that we want for our advanced AI agent node. Number 1, we start off with the most simple version of crafting JSON instructions, and that's just simple key value pairs. When you need to represent a single item or entity with a fixed set of attributes, you used a key value pair. The next focus is on arrays. When you need to represent a list of items, we're going to be using arrays. I'm going to be breaking that down for you, and this is going to be ideal for grouping items together. Number 3, we have array of objects. This is when you need to represent a collection of complex items, where each item has multiple attributes. So these are going to be the 3 main focuses that we stay on today. in regards to building JSON instructions. It's all I think you need right now in order to get your foot in the door. This is all I've really used. Unless you're getting super, super in-depth and complex, I don't think that you're going to need much more. Most agentic systems can be built upon these three foundations of JSON. If you need structured outputs, and more than likely, if you're building AI agents, you will 100% need them. So let's dive into simple key value pairs and just get started. Let's have a look and break down what this format really is all about. So similar to my example I was giving you earlier, let's take a look at this example where we have Alice here. Maybe Alice is being stored as data within a system, and maybe we're tracking students here. Again, we're starting this JSON with an open curly brace and closing it with a closed curly brace. And everything within this JSON object, because the JSON object is being signified by these curly braces, is just a simple key value pair. So notice how all of the keys, again, are in double quotes. Whenever you're defining a key, it's going to be in double quotes. So name, and then we have colon, Alice. And then we put a comma. Alice is a string, and since this is representing a person's name and it's a string, we have to put that in double quotes. So key value pair number one, name is the key representing the person's name, and the value of that name is Alice, which is a string, signified by the double quotes. Key value pair number two, we have age is the key. So that goes in double quotes. All keys go in double quotes. And the value is 25. So what is the age value of our subject, Alice, right here? And since this value is a number, it doesn't need the double quotes. Strings are the only thing, and keys, obviously, that need double quotes. Let's take a look at key value pair number three. Key value pair number three is student. That is the key representing whether the person is a student or not. And there's only two answers to this. You either are a student or you're not a student. So the value is false in this case, but a Boolean represents true or false value, and that's not enclosed in quotes. This is really good for filtering because there's only one of two ways it can go. It's either true or it's false, and you could set up routes within your automation that say, okay, if is student is true, then route to this direction. If is student is false, then route to another direction. So it's really powerful, even just using something as simple as a Boolean, for completely spicing up your agentic system. Now, lastly, note that the curly braces enclose the entire JSON object, representing the collection of key value pairs. Beautiful. So this is simple key value pairs. I recommend you keep coming back to this in order to understand it. Hopefully you were taking notes and trying to write this down on your own, understanding the structure of it. Anytime we're listing out things in here with a key value pair, every key value pair is followed by a comma, but the last one is not. So we have key value pair, comma, key value pair, comma, and the last one, before we close out, does not follow with a comma because there's nothing else after this key value pair. There's no other key value pair. So we're closing out that JSON object just like that. But let's get into the next JSON focus, which is arrays. Let's have a look at an array. This represents multiple items within a specific category. Now, this setup is useful for simple lists, whether you're listing names, listing tags, listing items within categories, and each item in the list is uniform, so it's usually the same type. You're not going to mix values here. That's what I said down here, actually. We aren't mixing numbers with strings or Booleans with strings or strings with Booleans, right? Let's take a look at this. We have an open and close for a JSON object. So this is the JSON object that we're dealing with here. This is just signifying that we have one. And we are now dealing with an array here. So we have a key for this array, and then everything you can break down pretty much into key value pairs. So this is our key, and in order to define an array, you need these open and closed square brackets. So this is like we're defining our key value pair, where all of this is the value for the key of students. Now, the beautiful thing about this is think about this like you're in N8N. What you could have here is, instead of just one AI agent output, you could individually select and map students to different fields because we've listed out the exact array format that we want. Or you could select the overall students category and pull in all of the students to one field. So that's the power of using arrays, is it represents multiple items within a specific category. You could select individual items, but keep in mind when using arrays, they all have to be uniform or the same type of value. We could have a number field up here, and then we could have multiple different numbers. And I just want you to keep in mind, again, the curly braces enclose the entire JSON object. Now we can have multiple JSON objects within each other, which we're about to see, but this starts the JSON object, this closes it. These square brackets just signify that there is an array. So this is how to define an array. It's all about just learning how to define certain lists, learning how to define certain words, and where to put what. It's kind of confusing, but remember, all of these are in double quotes because they are strings. And notice again the commas. We have a comma after Alice, a comma after Bob, but Charlie has no comma because what we have is the end of an array and the end of the JSON object. So the square brackets are used to define the array, indicating that this value contains a list of multiple elements. So we have one key with 3 values here. Now, what happens when you want to give these values attributes? Maybe you want students, right? But you want Alice with an age attached. Since we can't combine the age in here, how do we go about that? Well, that's where we get into JSON focus number 3. And this is when you start getting quite into the weeds here. And this is called the array of objects. So I want to break it down from start to finish again. Let's take a look back at our old first simple key value pair JSON along with the array. So we have our simple key value pair of name, Alice, age 25 is student false. This is great, you know, we're defining everything about Alice. But when we want to put Alice in an array with other students, which I don't know why Alice would be in the students array if is student is false, but we're going to run with it. Let's just make sure that, let's pretend that this is true, okay? And Alice is in an array with other students. Right now we can't, or we don't have her age attached, and we don't have any other thing about her attached. We can't attach anything to Alice right now. Now, in order to attach all of these cool things and attributes to specific strings or values with multiple attributes, we can use an array of objects. So this is where we start going a level deeper, and we start having an object within an object, and we can have arrays within those objects that are within the main object. So keep in mind, curly braces represent the objects, arrays, square brackets. So it's all just broken down. And if you really think about it and really go, okay, if this is the object, this is how it's structured. If you sit down and you give it time, you could probably figure it out just by thinking about the structure. It's just difficult to pick up quickly because it's something new. But let's dive into a further review of array of objects. Let's dive into an actual example. We can put objects within arrays in order to accomplish the attribution of certain metrics like age to people within an array. Remember, the objects are defined with curly braces. So we have object 1, and now we have object 2 within here. Since we can't define age and mix values with each other, we can't mix strings with numbers, we have to put an object within this array so that we can do that. So now this is just an array of 2 new objects. And within objects, we can have key value pairs. And these key value pairs are attached with each other because they're within the same object. Instead of listing items, now we're listing objects. And these objects can have multiple key value pairs within. So now Alice is her own object. Bob is his own object. And what we have in here is an array of people. So as you can see, it's like breaking it down into subpages, right? We have the big JSON object, which is just defining, hey, this is a JSON object. Then we have the people page. Within the people page, we might have a page for Alice and a page for Bob. If you were trying to think about this in something like Notion, this is what this would look like. You have your array of objects, right? This is just a dashboard. You would have a page for people. And then before we actually could attribute the, age to Alice and Bob, this is what the array would have looked like. We would have had people, and then we have it listed as strings, Alice and Bob. But now that we're using an array of objects, we can actually create an entire page for Alice and an entire page for Bob. So I could actually turn this into a page, right? So now we can have attributes within the page for each. Right now they're just text. They have no attributes. But if we turn them into a page, now we can click in and add things like age. Maybe age is 25. Go back to people. Bob's age is, what is Bob's age? Bob's age is 30. So as you can see, it's just like nesting pages upon pages. And the further you go down the rabbit hole with nested objects, each page could be considered an object, and each page has attributes, or in this case, key value pairs. So that would be an idea broken down as a Notion example of what this would be doing in regards to pages. So we have a people page. Each person gets their specific page with that value, and then assigned to the page would be another key value pair for Alice or Bob here. Now you can kind of get lost in the sauce. You can kind of get so in depth into thinking about how you structure things like this, and you start to get a little lost, but you have to shift your focus back. These are the three main focuses of JSON, right, that I just showed you. And it goes from least difficult to most difficult, which if you practice this for a day or two, you're going to have it down if you actually start implementing it into some of your agentic systems. And I'm going to show you examples of me doing that here at the end of this module. But what I want you to realize is the goal is to structure our data so we have more control over the dynamic fields in our AI agent node. That's why we're doing all this. We're trying to get more options to select from. That way we can map it to fields a lot easier. We can filter, we can route, we can branch, we can merge, we can split. We can do all sorts of stuff once we have it in a JSON object format. And the more granular data we can extract, the more powerful and autonomous we can make our agents. The more granular that you can go into your output, the wider the opportunity and the wider the routes you can go. So now, without further ado, let's craft some JSON together. I recommend using, again, a free tool like VS Code in order to craft this JSON, similar to the XML hierarchy I was showing you in last module. And right now, I'm telling you, if you haven't watched that XML hierarchy and you don't know how to currently craft instructions using XML, I highly, highly recommend you go watch that before tackling this. Now, VS Code can be downloaded to your desktop for free and allows a much more user-friendly environment. So let's get right into it. This is the agent that I want to build, and I'm going to be using JSON and XML instructions for this process so you can start to see how agentic systems come together with these two items and how much more powerful your automations get once you understand these prompting principles here. So this automation in N8N is going to start with a chat input trigger node. So it's going to start when I type in a recipe. And I just want this to be a basic natural language way of me talking to this agent. I just want to say, for example, pasta with garlic and butter and shrimp for 8 people. And I want to pass that input to the AI agent node. And this AI agent node will probably use something like ChatGPT, seen here, in order to take my natural language text input and define ingredients and instructions. From there, based on my ingredients and my instructions and the data that I have, I want to be able to send parts of it to my Google Docs where it has the entire recipe. The other part of it, I want to have Slack send me a notification in order to buy specific groceries. I just want this to hold what I need to buy, but I want the Google Doc to hold the entire recipe guide. So how would I do that right now without JSON? Well, the truth is I probably wouldn't, because right now without JSON, our AI agent node is only giving us one bulk response. And of course, we could add in another entire agent node if we wanted to that parsed out specific groceries, and then we could add in another one that parses out the full recipe guide. But going about it like this, where you're having 3 AI agent nodes for one simple task that could be replaced by a simple JSON structure, is just very silly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go build a draft of this automation without JSON instructions or output, and I'm just going to craft some very basic XML instructions for this and just create this automation without the JSON to show you the struggles that I'm going to be dealing with. So within N8N, I can hit create workflow, and then I'm just going to rename this real quick before I forget. I'm just going to name it example number 3, and I can name this recipe creator. I want to add my first step, and if you remember my Miro board, my first step was a chat input, and you can do that by selecting on chat message right here. I'm going to select that. Then I'm going to make chat publicly available. An initial message, I'm just going to delete initial message. And then I'm going to go back to Canvas here. So now I have this chat feature down at the bottom where I can type anything I want and send it off. And then that's what's going to start the rest of this automation here. So as soon as I type out a message, remember, I want it to go to the AI agent node in order to dissect what I need for this recipe. So I'm going to hit Advanced AI and then select AI agent. From here, what I can do is just go back to Canvas for now so you can see this is connected to the AI agent. I'm going to connect a chat model first, and I'm just going to connect my OpenAI chat model since I have a ton of credits on there that I still need to use. And I will turn it on GPT-4o, and then I will go back to Canvas. Now, this is the chat model that's powering this AI agent. I'm going to rename this chat model to GPT-4o, and then I can just hit rename just so I know what model I'm using here. And then I need to go in the AI agent, and instead of source for prompt being connected chat trigger node, I'm just going to define it below with an expression and then execute the previous node real quick. So I'm just going to, throw in some example data. I'm going to say testing, and now that I have that test in here, I can go back to the AI agent and actually map the test field, like where the chat input is coming in, to the text. So this is the text it's going to be receiving, and then I can create instructions for the text that it receives by adding a system message like we learned in last module. This is the dynamic information I'm talking about. We have the ability to pull it in and actually use it. So I'm pulling in my chat input because I'm going to be typing in recipes dynamically, and they're always going to be changing. I don't have a fixed thing that I'm just saying. This is an expression. So dynamically, this text is going to change. This would be like giving ChatGPT a prompt, right? That's what I'm signifying by saying I'm chatting to you, like create me a meal plan for tomorrow. That would be the same thing as me asking ChatGPT to create me a meal plan for tomorrow. Right now it's saying I don't have access to the credentials. Ask the owner to share them with you. So since that isn't working, I'm just going to re-upload my credentials. Sometimes you have to do weird things like that. So I'm going to connect and create a new credential. I've already got my API key all connected here. And then I can hit save and let's see if it tests successfully. Beautiful. So this should work now. I'm going to leave it on GPT-4o mini. That should be fine. And now let's see if this works. I'm going to send it off. And it looks like it's working now. Sometimes it's weird. You have to create new credentials randomly, but then it works. So that's fine. And then it gives me my meal plan in a big jumbled output. But I want you to notice something here. If I keep trying to follow my diagram and I go to things like Google Docs, maybe I want to create a document. I'll set up my credentials later. And maybe I want to go to another thing like Slack and have it send me a notification. I can have it send me a message. If I want it to do all of these things, it's going to be very difficult putting custom information in Google Docs and different information in Slack, right? What if I only want the grocery list to send me a notification in Slack so I know what to buy, but I want the Google Doc to hold the full recipe guide? Well, it's going to be very difficult right now because all we have is a single output. And you know what? In order to make this even more fun, I'm actually going to not do Google Docs and I'm going to do Airtable because Airtable has functionality where I can create many fields within a specific record. So let's say I want the full recipe coming into Airtable. I'm going to connect that node to the Advanced AI Agent node just like that. And I want the full recipe coming here, and I want the grocery list coming here. I'm going to connect my Slack real quick. Now, if I want to send a message to a certain channel from my Slack, I can select that from the list. Maybe I want to send it to general. If I want to send the grocery list, the only output I have is the entire meal plan, right? I only have one output I can map here. So we need to use JSON in order to get multiple outputs. I mean, I could put it in here and I could send a test output to see how it looks, right? I could test this step. But if I were to send it, it would give me the entire meal plan. It wouldn't just give me the groceries that I need to buy. Now, this is going to be a way using JSON that we could send information down two different routes from a single AI agent output. I'm going to go ahead and create an Airtable database that can support what I want to throw in there. So I just created a very simple Airtable database. I can name this recipe dashboard. And what I have is a column for recipe name, instructions, and ingredients. This would be like me just replacing Google Docs with Airtable. Like Airtable a lot better for something like this. But now I can connect that within my N8N, just get everything out of the way first. So just like that, mapped my recipe dashboard, my recipe guides, just kind of building out the automation right now. We're going to get into the JSON here in a second, but I want to show you some of the struggles that come along with just having a single AI agent output from artificial intelligence here from GPT-4o mini. As you can see in my Airtable, I have fields like recipe name, instructions, and ingredients, but I only have one output. And I'm not going to map the entire meal plan or recipe to recipe name. I have no way of extracting a recipe name. I have no way of extracting instructions or extracting ingredients. So that's why we're going to use JSON, because this single output is limiting us significantly. We have the automation built. Now it's just time to craft some better instructions for the AI agent in order to accept the chat input and then have a specific output format we use with XML system message instructions. This is going to be kind of a full comprehensive guide and showing you how to create something very structured, very consistent from start to finish. So you now know XML, you now know JSON. Now it's time to put the two together and create something that's actually a usable product. And to create an agent that's consistent, it understands what you're trying to do. You can do really whatever from here. Now it's time to get into crafting your XML instructions. These are the instructions where you're telling the agent what to do in a structured format. This XML format, like I said in the last module, if you haven't watched that, please just go watch that. It'll make your life a lot easier here. But it's easy for humans to read and understand and interpret, and machines love interpreting and reading this style of text as well. So that's what we want to create our instructions in. I'm going to hit new file, and then I'm just going to name this file. I'll name it recipe agent instructions.xml. Again, I'm using VS Code because of how user-friendly it is for doing things like JSON and XML instructions here. So I'm going to hit built in, and then I can save this to my files here. I'll hit create file, and now we're in a .xml file. This is where I'm going to want to add some instructions for my agent in basic XML format. I'm not going to be explaining this part. If you want to learn what I'm even doing, what all this is, make sure you go watch the last module. So I'm going to write some instructions now. So I have my basic agent instructions with a role, goal, and instructions, basically just instructing this agent to take in recipes and then to take in ideas and create recipes and step-by-step instructions based on my requested dish and serving size. And then I have some basic instructions here. So already, using the instructions that we have in here with no JSON output defined, we would get better results. If I come into the AI agent, what we can do now is we can add an option for a system message. And the system message is going to be given to the agent before the conversation even starts. So what we're doing here is we're giving our XML instructions to the agent within the system message. And the text field is just the input of the user, which in this case is going to be a chat input. So now I could come into the chat feature and I could type out a recipe idea. Maybe I want steak and penne vodka for 5, and I could send that off. And it might not execute these two steps because I haven't mapped any fields, but we just want to see the AI agent response to this. It's going to be using the VS Code instructions from the system prompt, and it should give us something a little bit better than we had before. It looks like both of these nodes executed successfully, but if we click into here, as you can see, it gives us a much better output. All we had to do in the text field was map our chat input and say steak with penne vodka for 5, and it did everything I wanted. It said, here's a complete recipe with ingredients, and it gives me all the ingredients. It gives me instructions, and that's all because I set that up in the XML system instructions, and this was with only 17 lines of instructions. So now we need to get into actually crafting JSON outputs, because still we're running into the problem where we only have a single one item output. So anytime we want to map that output to any of these fields or map specific things about it, we still can only map the output. And it's just a huge, big, jumbled mess. So we need to create things that we can actually map to whatever field we want and manipulate. Now, the way we do that within N8N, the long-awaited way we do that is by double-clicking this AI agent. And then we need to actually check this ticker right here where it says require specific output format. We want to select that. And then it says connect an output parser on the canvas to specify the output format you require. I can go back to canvas, and now we have a new section right here. Remember, we had memory tool and nothing. Now we have memory tool, and if we scroll in here, we have output parser. So now we can add an output parser to this AI agent. So I'm going to select this little plus icon, and it gives you all of the output parsers there are available. I want structured output parser with this little code symbol. This is going to return data in a defined JSON format. So I can select this. And here we need to generate JSON from example and actually start defining all of the fields that we want to be able to pull from. So this is when you're kind of on your own, because it's really entirely up to you with what fields you want to pull in. Now, before you start defining your output structure in here, what I recommend you do is go to an app like VS Code and define it within your instructions first. Give your agent instructions, input, output examples of all the variables that you want, and then go generate it from those examples. It'll be much easier that way. So honestly, you can leave this alone for now, the output parser. We'll come back to that later, but now it's time to actually go in a Google Doc or VS Code and define how do we want our outputs. Now in the XML instructions module, I showed you how to craft agent input and output examples. And I think this is the best structured way to go about doing this when defining what kind of JSON objects you want, what kind of fields you want, how many fields you want, etc. So that is what I'm going to do right now. So I've just finished crafting my first user input agent output example, and this is the best way to get consistent structured outputs literally every single time. And knowing XML plus JSON together is just an insanely powerful tool. So as you can see, all I'm doing here is the exact same thing I was doing in last module with these instructions. I've already went over how to structure all this, where to define what, how to do user input, agent output. But this time I'm just typing in an idea of what my usual input will be. So when I go to this chat feature right down here and I click chat, what is the message that I will usually be sending off? Well, I want it to be as simple as me typing out a recipe and typing out my serving size. So I'm going to give this input, like a usual user input example, to my system instructions here. And I've accidentally added this in twice for some reason. I must have messed up a copy and paste. There we go. That's better. But I'm adding in user input, and then I'm adding in how I want the agent to output this information. And this agent output is in JSON format. This is how you get all of those fields in there. This is the secret sauce. No pun intended with the creamy pasta and butter garlic here. So as you can see, I have all of the fields that I want to be able to have control over. I want to be able to have control over a recipe name. And then AI can do the rest with generating it, but it's just structuring its output differently now. Instead of giving me one big jumbled paragraph, it will go in this agent output format because I'm defining it to do so within my system instructions. And I haven't even really done the definition of JSON object output parser within the N8N agent module. This is just helping it give extra fuel under the fire, right? And just helping me understand the structure I want as well. So I'm listing out JSON. I have my basic simple JSON key value pair object here. The number one focus, the main idea, the exact same prompting principle we went over in the first focus of JSON. We have a very simple key value pair JSON format here. We have key, and then we have a string, right? The key here is recipe name. The string, or the value attached to that key, is, in this case, creamy butter garlic pasta, because I'm showing it how to respond to certain user inputs. Servings, 8, because I wanted it for 8 people. Prep time, minutes. This is for AI to decide. Cook time, minutes, for AI to decide. Instructions for AI to generate. But notice how I'm putting literally everything I need within this section here. Now, we're going to get more advanced with this, and we're going to add on to this. But first, I'm going to add one more user input agent output example so you can see how this works. All right, I've got it in here, and for this user input, as you can see, we've closed out this agent output example and the example entirely, and we've actually started a new example of user input to agent output. So this user input is chocolate chip cookies for 6 people. And then I just give literally the exact same thing as I did up here, just in relation to the chocolate chip cookies, just reiterating how I want it to respond. When you give multiple input-output examples of how you want your agent to respond, it takes the information in much easier and much better. So serving 6, because I said for 6 people, chocolate chip cookies, and then I give that prep time, cook time, and instructions down here, similar to up here, this exact same format. So now what I can do, now that I have it defined within my instructions, is I can copy my entire instructions. Anytime you want to update your instructions, this is why I also recommend keeping it in VS Code, because it's so user-friendly, so easy, so nice to update instructions. You can easily save as you go. But I'm going to hit Control-C. I'm going to recopy my new system message. I'm going to go back to N8N, and then I'm going to update my AI agent system message. Remember the backend instructions. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to delete the current system message and paste in the new one with the agent output and input examples. Now that we have our JSON structure in here within our system message, we can now go to the output format parser, because now it's easy for us. I can go back to Canvas and I can open up the structured output parser. And now I just need to give an example right here. If it's on generate from JSON example, I can just give an example of my JSON. And then it will automatically create schema for us around our JSON. This is how AI is understanding to output our data in a specific way with the key value pairs. So I'm going to go back to VS Code. And now I'm just going to grab one of my JSON examples here. And by the way, guys, you can generate this JSON with AI as well if you're really struggling on the agent output. You can just say, here are the variables I want. I want a simple key value pair, because you know all the terminology now, and that's the biggest hurdle, is actually understanding the words that go into creating things like this. You know, if you just know what it's called, which you do now, you can use AI to help you. And that's what I highly recommend doing, actually, is saying, I have this agent that I want to create recipes for me. I want to create a JSON object that extracts this, 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 and this with a simple key value pair object. You know all that terminology now, so you can generate these agent instructions with artificial intelligence. But what I'm going to do is I want to copy this format here. And what we're doing is we're kind of defining our structure. So we want to show this output parser the structure of our JSON, which we created within VS Code. So I'm going to go back to the structured output parser, and then I'm just going to paste in an example. This is just an example to generate something greater that's going to allow us to have multiple fields. So I'll hit paste, and it looks crazy in here, but if it's blue and there's no errors, you're good to go. So now it has the schema in here. It knows the idea of what we want. I can go back to Canvas, and now it's all about testing. So let's see if our new system works. I'm going to hit chat, and then I'm going to type in something like homemade hot chocolate for 5 people. And then I'll send it off. And now it's being processed within my AI agent here. Let's see how the output comes out. It looks like it ran successfully, which is great. Now we can go into one of our fields like Airtable. Now we can go into one of our action nodes like Airtable or Slack and see how the fields look. Because we've defined our JSON structure, we've given proper instructions, we've included agent input and output examples, we've done everything we need, and you're going to get so quick at this, it's going to be like second nature with a little bit of practice. But if I click into Airtable now, as you can see in the agent output, it's no longer just one output. We have multiple different fields with all of our defined JSON objects. So if I go back to VS Code, as you can see, all the fields are mapped to what we told it to create for us in these agent output examples. And the real sauce, guys, lies in this structured output parser. So going here, turning this on, and then selecting structured output parser, and then defining the exact structure you want in JSON. You can even do this with arrays and objects within arrays, but this is giving our agent enough information to actually parse this output here. So now this is where the fun begins, because now from one AI agent response, I don't need like 4 different models generating different things. What I can do is I can come in here and I can map certain things to my Airtable. So I'm going to delete all of the fields that are currently in here, and then I'm going to go back to my recipe creator. I'm going to double click in my Airtable module, and now I have, if I go to schema up here, I can map recipe name to recipe name. So I can drag that, and then I can map instructions to instructions. And then I don't currently have one for ingredients, but we could easily create that. So now when I hit test step, what this is going to do is take the different mappings and map it to the respective columns. So now we just have the ingredients and ingredients. We just have the recipe name under recipe name. This is really the power of JSON outputs. You could even go a lot more advanced, and I'll show you a couple of advanced examples. But right now we have it working to a point where I could come in here and I can say just a very simple recipe. Lemon pasta, rigatoni for 5, actually I'll do 7 people. Maybe I'm making a big dinner. Lemon pasta rigatoni for 7 people. I can send that off now, and it understands to parse my objects in a certain way, to parse my response that is respective to all my fields. So now it's giving me a nice title, and this is from one response, guys, and also instructions for that recipe very, very quickly. And now, how would you take it up a notch? Well, it's as simple as editing your instructions to add more fields, giving more agent output examples. You know, you could use the same user inputs, but you could just make the agent outputs more robust in order to give more information into your user input, into what you actually want. And then you'd have to go back and redefine your JSON structure within this structured output parser. So let me show you an example of what that might look like, updating my instructions to be a little bit more robust and have everything that we need. So if I come in here, again, I can leave user input the same. All I need to do is change user output to have more advanced JSON. And this is where I love using AI, just saying, here's my current variables, here's what I want you to add, generate me JSON along with my XML instructions in order to accomplish what I need. Use AI as your tool. I mean, I got this generated in about 30 seconds. Watch this. So we see my current JSON where I have very basic key value pairs, recipe names. I generated this with AI in about 30 seconds because I knew the right questions to ask and I knew the terminology, which you now know the terminology as well. So I can just paste this in and take a look at how much more robust you can get your agent outputs. We have recipe names, servings, ingredients. We now have ingredients, and this is an array, right? We're seeing these square brackets here with different ingredients here. And we have each instruction in an array, so we can now pull specific instruction steps within our output field. So let me show you an example of how to update your system message and your structured output response. So first I'm going to copy all of this by hitting Control-A, Control-C, and then I'm going to go back to N8N and update the system message. That's always what I like doing first. I can hit Control-A and then backspace all of that and then paste in the new system message. And then I need to go update my structured output parser. And I can do that by going here and then copying from curly bracket open to curly bracket close. I can hit Control-C, and this is like defining my new structure here. So I'm gonna delete the old way of doing it and paste in the new way that actually corresponds with my current system message. And then I wanna go back to Canvas here. And now we can run a quick test to see all the new fields that we're getting pulled in dynamically for Airtable and Slack. I can now send myself a message with the ingredient list, hopefully, because if we look back at my VS Code instructions, we have ingredients. So this could be like my shopping list, and I'll show you how to map that in a second here. But let's run this. Let's run a quick example. I'm going to hit chat, and then I'm going to type in salmon with sweet potatoes in olive oil. Maybe you can add in some custom fields, maybe just like, custom ingredients that you want. AI will understand and interpret that for 3 people. And I'll send that off. It's going to go through with the new system message. And as you can see, the only reason there was a problem is because we have more fields to map and it's in a different output structure. So if I click into Airtable, look at all of these cool fields that we have now from a single AI agent. We have output, we have it mapped by ingredients, instructions. We can individually pull each instruction now because that's the way we defined our JSON structure and set it up with our agent output examples. So this right here is like reinforcing. All of these instructions are just reinforcing AI, your advanced AI agent node, what to do. But the real sauce, guys, I'm telling you, is within this structured output parser. So you need to turn that on. You need to give the output format that you want your AI agent to respond in. So I want recipe name, I want servings, ingredients. So you're giving example JSON so it can create schema in order for it to accurately parse this. But now let's put it all together. You could go even more in depth. I had another example that I was even going to show you where I actually added ingredients with quantities like name unsalted butter, softened quantity, half cup, 1 stick. And that was on my ingredient list that I was going to show you. But look at this. I'm just generating this with AI. I say, finally, let's make it one more step advanced, changing the format to style this while maintaining current recipe instructions. And then I just show it an example of what I want. I could even say something like objects with an array and it would understand that. But a lot of these instructions, once I knew the right questions to ask, and once I knew the formats that I wanted and I had some example formats to give it, such as these instructions, then it can really help you with the process of generating everything. But let me go back in here and map this so we can finish out this workflow. Now we have recipe name that we can just map like this. I can just drag over recipe name like that. Beautiful. Instructions, I can just do the entire instructions collection here. You can also do that where you're dragging in the entire collection. So you have options, like you can individually select each one, or you can just drag in the entire thing and it will work just fine. Now we have ingredients in here. So I could either go in and drag in individual ingredients and label them like ingredient 1, or however I want to do it. Or if I'm lazy, I could just drag in the entire array here, all of the ingredients just like that. And I can go back to Canvas now. And remember, since we define this structure, it's going to be the exact same every time. I'm going to post in Slack and I'm going to say, hey Drake, buy this stuff. And when we get really advanced, we can even connect our Google Calendar to this and have this recipe be set for a certain day on my Google Calendar and have this Slack message tell me when to buy the ingredients by. Or we could hook it up to an online service like Instacart and have it automatically order the ingredients for us. That would be very agentic. But I can just drop the ingredients in the buy this stuff Slack message. So now if I go out here and I hit back to Canvas, we have an agentic system where I can type in a recipe and it's going to send me a message to buy the ingredients and create a record in my Airtable database, maybe of all my AI recipes, right? I could even call it the AI recipe dashboard. But I'm going to save this automation, and now I'm going to test it out a few times. So we have my current homemade hot chocolate and lemon pasta rigatoni. Let me try my salmon recipe again. I'm going to copy this and then paste it in here and then send it off. And now it's going to be running through this using my exact instructions, structuring the output, sending me an ingredient list, sending me a new record to my Airtable database. We can probably watch this populate live over here, actually, if we wait a few seconds. Let me go back, see what it's doing in N8N. And the reason we got an error here, guys, is because Airtable can't actually accept these arrays, and I forgot about that. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to just drag that in there. We'd have to have a little bit of a workaround. But when using something like Airtable or Notion, a lot of the time they don't really like it when you try to throw in an entire array. So having just base instructions as well, like having them sorted out in ingredients is really useful, or just like individual instructions is very useful, but also having one instructions file as well with all of the instructions combined, or all of the ingredients combined if you're trying to map it to a field, is very useful. So this is a great opportunity to show how to use AI in order to edit your instructions. Let's just say I do want to create a combined instructions and a combined ingredients field. What I could do is I could copy all my user input, agent output examples, and I could head over to ChatGPT and I could say, I need help adding on to my JSON. Then I could say in each example listed below, I want to add a combined ingredients and a combined instructions that aggregates each of the fields together from the array. So right now we have everything broken up into these arrays right here, but I want combined ingredients and have it all in one key value pair, and then having them all in one string, because right now they're individual strings, which makes it difficult to map to Airtable. And I also want the same for the other agent instructions. Then I can say I want to keep the array, but in both cases, for both examples, have the combined key value. See, this is where it comes in handy knowing the terminology, pairs. And then I can just say, here is my current examples, keep everything else the same. And then I would paste it in here, my current examples of agent input, agent output, so it understands the context of what I'm talking about. I would send it off. And after this, we should be able to update our instructions, our structured output parser, and complete this automation. And as you can see, it's creating this for us. So it's actually giving us exactly what we wanted. We wanted the ingredients still separated. We wanted the instructions still separated, but now it's giving us combined ingredients and combined instructions. This will allow us to easily map those fields to Airtable. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this in and replace my JSON within my VS Code. So I'm going to go up here and I'm just going to replace this completely. And of course, the formatting is completely off, so I'll have to reformat that. And if you don't want to reformat, you can just come in here and say, give me full copy and paste code with instructions included, and send that off, and it should give you the full copy and paste, making it a lot easier on yourself. And as you can see, After thinking for only 29 seconds, it gave me everything that I need, the complete copy and paste file, so I don't have to reformat anything. If you're lazy like myself, then this works out great. I'm just going to hit copy, come into VS Code, and then from where it starts, which is at examples, I'm going to scroll all the way down and copy to the bottom. And then I'm going to go into VS Code and start at examples, scroll all the way down and copy and paste. I'm going to redo that and paste it in. And now everything is formatted for us. And we have that combined ingredients, combined instructions. So now what we need to do is copy this once again, go back to our system message, replace that, and it's rinse and repeat at this point. I'm going to delete that, paste it. We now have our new input examples and output examples. Back to Canvas, change the structured output parser with an example from our JSON. So now I'm just going to give it my example JSON here, and this is going to allow it to see the structure in order to parse it, and I'm going to paste in that JSON example. It will appear with a red dot here if there's an error or if you need to fix it. If there is, then just fix it with ChatGPT. Now I can go back to Canvas and I can actually just test this step first. I'll hit test step, and then it should execute the node. We'll make sure everything is running in okay within our AI agent. And after we have test data within the AI agent, using our new system message and new instructions, then we can actually go map it in Airtable before actually running a full execution. So now we have combined ingredients, combined instructions, which we can then easily copy and paste within here. So now for combined instructions, I'll drag and drop it over here. There's another way to do this, by the way, in regards to actually coming up and parsing out these arrays, but for the sake of this tutorial, I just want to keep it simple and change the overall instructions. Nothing hurts by adding those two fields in there. And that's what I love about this, is you can basically add fields, dynamic fields, based on the AI agent's output whenever you so choose. And then I can go back to Slack and I can say, Drake, buy this stuff. And then here I can even put the combined ingredients if I want. And now everything should be working and running, but we'll test it out and we'll take a look. I'm going to say penne vodka. Love penne vodka with steak, and we'll also add a side of chimichurri for 6 people. So this is an advanced recipe, right? Kind of a unique cause. So I'm going to send it to AI in order to do all the shopping and thinking for me. And it's going to be using our new structured output with those combined fields. Now, the reason I did that was because Airtable can't use the collections when it's mapping it to the columns. It's very difficult for it to do that. But now, node executed successfully. We should see it populate in here. Beautiful. We have instructions. We have ingredients. Let's go to Slack and let's go to my general chat. As you can see, it says, hey, Drake, buy this stuff. And it gives me all of the ingredients that I need to buy, which, holy crap, that's looking like a lot of ingredients. But this is an example of using JSON within your AI agent, creating structured outputs in order to give yourself more dynamic information to work with in regards to your AI agent response. This is a huge unlock once you understand this completely. I recommend watching over this module a couple of times because it's really not going to be easy to understand it in one go, and it's going to take time and practice. I recommend building out an automation similar to the one I did where you're classifying certain things, and you can use the AI agent output in order to give you multiple different structured fields when you set up the JSON correctly. Now, again, if you haven't watched the previous prompting principles module where we go over how to create that XML hierarchy, I highly recommend it for your learning experience and building successful agents with N8N. Not only does it help you in regards to solving your problems, but if you have clients or people that are buying your template workflows, it just looks a lot more professional, it's a lot more sound, a lot more consistent, and it just gets the job done much better. So I hope you enjoyed this. I will see you in the next module.